friends, welcome back. In this video lesson, we'll be going through 40 common English words to build your vocabulary and to sound more natural speaking in English. Together, we'll go through these 40 common English words, we'll go through a few examples to better help you remember and most importantly, use them when speaking in English. Friends, these 40 common English words I've chosen for this video lesson are synonyms of 9 English words you're most likely using on a daily basis when speaking or writing in English. Now, it's okay if you're using these English words when speaking in English, but it is also good to know some synonyms. So those are other words and other phrases which are similar in meaning to those words to add more meaning and to communicate your ideas more clearly when speaking in English. This is exactly what we'll be going through in this video lesson by focusing on the synonyms of these 9 words, those being honest, admit, try, fat, boring, rude, and finally laugh. Now, before we go through these 40 common English words, I would like to hear from you. Tell me in the comments below this video, how do you increase your vocabulary? So are you using a thesaurus? Are you using a dictionary? Are you listening to movies, to songs? How do you increase and expand your vocabulary in English? Let's begin by looking at the first word, and that word is honest. Now friends, if somebody is honest, it means that they're truthful, they're not deceitful, they are sincere, they're honest. Now, instead of always describing somebody as being honest, there are other common English words you could use. For example, the word sincere. Now, if somebody is sincere, it means that they are genuine, they're honest. They tend to say what they genuinely feel or how they behave. For example, I'm sure Mary is a sincere person. Now, frank is a great word to be using to describe that someone is open, honest in their communication. Frank is a little bit more informal. It is an informal word you could use to describe somebody being really honest. Usually also, if somebody is frank, it also means that they are very direct. They're very direct. They may be a little bit too honest when speaking or writing. An example of frank in use could be, my friend Mary has been asking me for days now to go with her to the movies, but I really don't know when I'll go with her as I don't have a lot of time. I ended up messaging Mary and said, Mary, to be frank, I really don't know when we'll go as I have no time. Another great word, another more informal word you could use instead of honest is the word blunt. Friends, if somebody is blunt, they are really honest. So they are uncompromisingly forthright. An example of this in a sentence could be, my sister bought a new dress yesterday and I really didn't like it. And I didn't really care too much about her thoughts. And I told her, to be blunt, I hate the dress. Now the words frank and blunt, as I have mentioned before, are a little bit more informal ways of expressing that somebody or something is really honest. But a nice and formal way of saying that somebody is honest could be forthright. Listen carefully and repeat after me, forthright. If somebody is forthright, it means that they are direct and they're very outspoken. So they're very honest, they're very direct, and they're outspoken. They don't really hide their thoughts. For example, yesterday we had our weekly meeting and our colleague Mary is always hiding something. She's not honest. It'd be great if she was more forthright with us about her future goals and her future plans. Let's move on to the next word, and that word is admit. Admit. Friends, if you admit something, it means that you confess something to be true or it to be the case. Now, instead of always saying admit, there are other words you could use. The first word you could use is confess. Now, if you confess something, it means that you admit that you've maybe committed a crime or that you've done something wrong. For example, Mary confessed that she damaged my car. Another word you could use instead of admit could be reveal. Listen carefully and repeat after me, reveal. If you reveal something, it means that you make known some secret or some information to other people. For example, I was really angry when Mary confessed that she damaged my car, but I don't know where she is. So I went to her husband and I forced him to reveal her whereabouts. In the end, he finally revealed her whereabouts. Friends, here revealed is being used because he finally told me that secret. He finally confessed to Mary's whereabouts. Friends, both the words confess and reveal are great to be using in both informal and formal situations. But a more formal way of saying that you admit to something is by using the word avow. Listen carefully and repeat after me, avow. If you avow an idea or a thought or something you've done, it means that you assert and openly confess it. For example, we didn't know that Bob had changed his faith 2 years ago, but only recently he avowed his change of faith. Let's move on and look at other words, synonyms of the word cry. Now, if you cry, it means that you shed tears because of some sort of pain, sorrow, or some form of stress. Now, depending on the situation and why somebody is crying, there are other words you could use. For example, the word weep. Listen carefully and repeat after me, weep. Weep also means to cry, to shed tears, but you may be also shouting and making some sounds while crying. For example, Bob was out in the playground playing with his friends, but they were being really mean and really cruel to him. I caught him weeping in the corner because of their cruelty. The word sob is also another way of expressing that somebody is crying. But if somebody is sobbing, they're crying really, really loudly and they are gasping for air. For example, Mary got some really bad news yesterday and she broke down and she sobbed like a child. Now, the next word, to bawl, you've most likely heard in TV shows or in movies, and you may have even heard of the phrase to bawl your eyes out. Friends, to bawl means to weep and to cry really loudly. For example, yesterday I got some really bad news and I bawled my eyes out. Now, the next word we'll be focusing on is the word fat. Friends, please do take note that talking about weight is always a sensitive issue, so please do keep this in mind when having conversations in English. But if you do have to describe somebody's weight, there are other words you could use instead of the word fat. Now, the word plump means that somebody is rather fat, so they are rather round and they are overweight. For example, a rather plump male just crossed the street. You could also use the word overweight. Again, listen to the pronunciation and repeat after me, overweight, overweight, overweight. Friends, if somebody is overweight, it means that they are carrying excess weight and they are over the desirable weight for that person or for their height. For example, it's time for Mary to admit that she's overweight and she needs to do some physical exercise. Now, the words flabby and chubby are very informal ways of saying that somebody maybe is overweight and they're fat. Now, if somebody has a lot of soft and loose skin, you may use the word flabby. This can be used to describe different parts of the body, but you may hear many English speakers saying that they may have a flabby stomach. So they have a lot of loose flabs or a lot of loose parts on their stomach. An example of this in a sentence could be, this exercise really helps me flatten out my flabby stomach. Friends, if somebody is chubby, they are plump and they are a little bit rounded. For example, over the last few weeks, Mary's put on a little weight and she's looking a little chubby these days. Let's move on now to synonyms of the word boring. Instead of always describing something as being boring, you could also use the word tedious. Tedious. Friends, if something is tedious, it takes long, it's slow, and it's really, really dull. For example, it was a really tedious journey we went on the weekend. Another great word is the word dull. Listen carefully and repeat out loud, dull. If something is dull, it's not really that interesting and it's not really that exciting. For example, your learning doesn't have to be dull. You could also use the word uninteresting. Again, uninteresting. Uninteresting is the opposite of the word interesting. So if something is uninteresting, it means that it is not interesting. For example, the scenery in the movie was really uninteresting. Now, a more formal and a polite way of saying that maybe someone or something is boring could be using the word tiresome. Tiresome. Now, if something is tiresome, it means that it causes you to feel bored, annoyed, and just simply not really interested in what that person or that thing is doing or saying. Let's move on and look at other English words instead of always saying the word rude. Friends, another way of saying or describing that maybe someone or something is rude is using the word impolite. This is a really nice word. It is great for formal situations. Now, if somebody is impolite, it means that they are not showing or they simply don't have good manners. For example, it would have been rude of us to refuse his invitation. Another great formal way of saying that somebody is rude is by using the word insolent. Again, listen carefully and repeat, insolent. If somebody is insolent, it means that they are really, really rude. They really don't have a lot of respect for the people around them. For example, I really hate the insolent tone of Bob's voice. Now, the word impudent is also a great formal word to describe that somebody is rude. So that person is rude and they are showing no respect to other people. For example, Bob's thoughts are really impudent to say the least. Now, the next word, cheeky, you've most likely heard to describe children or maybe some sort of playful people who are a little bit rude but in an amusing way. Now, you could use cheeky to describe that somebody is being a little bit impolite, but they are funny. For example, Mary's daughter's only 4 years old, and at times when she visits, she can be a little bit cheeky. Let's move on and look at other English words you could use instead of always saying begin. Now, the first word you could use instead of saying begin is start. Start. If you start something, it means that you begin something from a certain time or space. For example, tomorrow we'll start working on our project. Now, the word initiate, listen carefully and repeat out loud, initiate is a great formal word to use instead of always using begin. If you initiate something, it means that you cause a process or an action to begin. For example, Mary's initiated the project that we're working on tomorrow. Another word you could use is the word launch. Again, listen carefully, launch. Now, if you launch something, it means that you start or set something or a process in motion. For example, Bob plans to launch his advertising campaign tomorrow. The word commence is a great word to be using in formal settings to describe that something will begin. For example, Bob will commence with the work tomorrow. Now, if we're talking about a journey, a career that you will begin in the future, instead of always saying begin, you could use the word embark. Listen carefully and repeat out loud, embark. For example, Mary's embarked in a new career and I wish her all the best. Moving on to the word exactly. Exactly. Friends, I use this word quite often to confirm something, and I'm sure you also use this word quite often as well, but there are other words you could use. Instead of saying exactly, you could use the word precisely. Listen carefully and repeat, precisely. Precisely. Now, if something is precisely, it means that it is in exact terms. It's not vague at all. For example, the guidelines were precisely defined. Another word you could use is the word completely. Now, if something is completely done, it's completely honest, it's completely true, it means that it is utterly true, honest. It is not lacking anything at all. For example, that story I told Mary was completely true. You could also use the word absolutely. Again, listen carefully and repeat after me, absolutely. Use this adverb to describe something with no qualification or limitation. There is no restriction. For example, Bob loves his cat. He absolutely adores his cat. Moving on to the last word, and that word is laugh. Friends, instead of always using the word laugh, you could use other words such as the word chuckle. If you chuckle, it means that you laugh quietly. So you're hiding your laugh, you're not laughing out loud, you are chuckling, laughing quietly. For example, Mary was so surprised when I saw her yesterday and I chuckled at the expression on her face. Now, giggle is also a great word to describe that somebody is laughing in a silly and a really quiet way. You may hear this being used in TV shows among girls and guys in schools when they are giggling really quietly in classrooms. For example, Bob was teaching in high school and he really hated when the students would giggle during class. Now, you could also use the word cackle. Friends, the word cackle does have a negative connotation because it means that you're laughing in a loud and in a really rude and harsh way. I usually associate this word with witches because witches usually laugh in an evil manner and they cackle. Not all the time, but most of the time. For example, the witch cackled at the end of the story. Like the word cackle, the word snigger also has a negative connotation. Friends, if you're sniggering or you snigger at somebody, it means that you laugh in a really unkind way. For example, it really hurt my feelings when I saw the children sniggering at Mary. They stood there sniggering at how she behaved and it was really hurtful. There you have it, friends. In this video lesson, we've gone through 40 common English words to build your vocabulary and to better express yourself when speaking in English. Make sure to watch this video lesson a few times, pay attention to the definition, create your own examples using these new English words to help you better remember and most importantly, use them when speaking in English. Remember to join the discussion in the comments below this video and share with us how you build and improve your English vocabulary. Remember friends, if you like this video lesson, make sure to like it, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get the latest lessons I post here on my YouTube channel, and be a good friend. Help your friends learning English by sharing this video lesson with them. Thanks for watching, thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments below this video. Bye for now.